Alright, so today we're working on this special beige edition Xbox. Maybe it'll be a different color by the end, maybe not. Obviously it is absolutely filthy. So I don't even want to turn it on and test it until I remove some of this garbage. So let's do that. Plastic spudger does the job. Absolutely tasty. Look at that. Philips DVD drive. That is good news. Before we do anything, let's vacuum up. Look at that. Oh, that's just fascinating. It's never been cleaned since 2004. Alright, now it's a bit less of a hazard to get in. So again, let's get our T10 bit and get in there. Wow, that is just brutal. Holy crap. Some more vacuuming required. That is the filthiest Xbox I have ever seen. Alright, that should be enough to get into it without dying of some sort of biohazard. Let's disconnect the DVD drive. Okay, gotta be careful not to make a mess here. Oh my god. Wow, I can barely see the motherboard. That is absolutely fascinating. Definitely previously enjoyed. Just wipe down the DVD drive a little bit before we get into all that and clean it completely. Now the good news is we actually have these Rubicon capacitors here. That is very uncommon. Most of these units come with the Nichicons, and those are notorious for failing and killing your Xbox. So you have to replace them to bring it back. Alright, well, let's give this motherboard a bit of a clean here. Look at that, it's green. Okay, well, we can kind of see the motherboard now. Now, these consoles do not use thermal paste. They use a phase change material, which does not need to be changed. However, when the heat sinks look this bad, it's best to just take them off for cleaning anyway, so we will do that. Now, the CPU sink is a fair bit easier to remove. And I just kind of wiggle it around, it comes right off. This one, though, I'll show you how to do that in a second. This one requires some heat, so we'll do that after. For now, we're just going to continue disassembling, and we're gonna go with that. So, taking off the fan. Now, these have little mounting points at the bottom that'd be a little bit brittle, so it's best to be very careful with them. Just gently lift up, hold it on one side, then do the other side, and it comes right off with a little pressure there. So we're all set with that. I'm going to collect all these components here to the side. Now is the time to unplug the motherboard. And then we can just remove every single T10 screw that this machine has. There should be 10 of these because this is a revision 1.6 board. Wow, these screws are almost as filthy as the board itself. Look at this one. Wow, that is fascinating. Look at this screw. Just wow. Alright, so that was 10 screws. You can see it's all loose. Now I have 2 screws holding down the power supply. 1 and 2. And we got 4 screws holding down each of these ports. Or sorry, 4 in total. Alright. Now, to remove these, just gently wiggle them side to side until they come out. Make sure there's no damage to the board. Same here, just wiggle side to side, and they'll come right off. There we go. And lift the ports out, just straight out like that. Now here comes one of the trickier bits. That involves getting a screwdriver in here. It's hard to show you well, but getting a screwdriver in here and just gently lifting off some plastic tabs here, hoping the case doesn't break, which it shouldn't, but it can happen sometimes. There we go. So that is out. So we have basically taken this fully apart now. Obviously, watch out with power supplies. If you've had this on at any point recently, do not touch any of these big caps. That will be bad news. You don't want to get a shock. Okay, so this is out. Now we'll need to clean this completely because it's absolutely filthy. So what we're gonna do is just press this tab at the bottom, and then it will come out. There you go. All right, so now we will just clean this off camera, and then we'll be right back. We've done the basic dusting. In a shocking turn of events, actually it was all completely loose dust. So it came out in a very, very satisfying way. I wish you could have seen it. In any case, we didn't even have to do the thermal compound, but we will end up doing it anyway. Power supply, nice and clean. Now on earlier revisions, these power supplies tend to have issues with these connectors here. The solder can break, but not on this version. This is all good. Fan, all clean, and we'll detail a little more after. So should be all good. Ports, also nice and clean. So we're all good there. Hard drive's all good. This one will require a little bit more wiping, which some people would try to use alcohol, but don't do that. This is better done with more water-based cleaning solutions. Because yeah, if I use alcohol, here's what happens. As soon as they dry it, it looks pretty ugly. Now I tend to use a different compound here. With that one, you can clean it off, and then you can just dry it, and it will look a lot better. At least it should. Yeah, that's pretty decent. So what I use is Whoosh. It's actually a screen cleaner, but I find it's spectacular for certain things like this. So fast forward and we'll be all clean here. Alright, so with the magic of editing, this thing is nicely cleaned. Inside doesn't have to be perfect, but it's still nice to have it nice and shiny. The outside, very important for a unit like this, which will at some point in the future be translucent, because any sort of imperfections you can see. So you don't want to have any rust or anything like that. This one was fortunately not rusty at all. It was just very dirty, and somebody was a bad boy and smoking around their console, so that took a lot of effort to clean up. Once again, I do find Whoosh here. Where is Whoosh? Whoosh is actually pretty decent for that. I've tried lots of other things, but that's the one that seems to work for me. And yeah, this one's all good to go. Now next up, we have to deal with this guy here. This one, normally I don't take the shield off, but it looks absolutely disgusting even after the dusting. You can see this is what happens when you smoke around your console. The tar gets everywhere and needs to be cleaned off, so it's gonna be fresh and look fresh and smell fresh. Now this one is not as easy as just taking it off. You have to very carefully pry these metal pieces out. I'll show you one. I tend to use a screwdriver that fits perfectly right in there, and then I can just lift that off very gently like that, and then I'll have all of those done in a sec. All of these are loosened and now they're ready to lift off, and this is why we're doing this. You can see it is absolutely disgusting in there. So we're going to clean this off. We're going to clean this off. We need to wash everything, and then we'll be right back. We gave this thing a pretty thorough wash. Now it's looking much better. The top here is what matters the most, because that is the top facing part, and will be seen through what has now become a crystal shell. I thought it was beige, but turns out we got a good deal, and it's actually a crystal Xbox shell. Fully cleaned. We'll give it a little polish as well at the end, and we should be all good. We also got our bottom shell cleaned up. This one was a fair bit easier, but these can be a massive pain if you have rust on your metal shielding, because that becomes absolutely impossible to clean. but that was not what happened to us, so we're happy. Alright, we have our last few plastic pieces good to go. Now for these ones, we cheat a little bit. We just throw them in the good old ultrasonic cleaner. Feel free to try using a toothbrush to do this, but getting into all of these and cleaning it with this 100% result, not very probable. This one, it's probably a little bit easier to do that, but it's small, fits in the cleaner, may as well use it. We also threw that one in there, came out perfectly. And of course, the most important thing when washing components like this, which are see-through, is making sure that you blow dry them. You can use something like this bad boy, the Metrovac, but it's not the best for that. I actually use the Aero, whatever it was called. That one is a better brand. Much more powerful. So it does the job. Alright, so now we're gonna start putting our shell back together. That is pretty straightforward. They go straight in. A little bit lifts out. Make sure that all the little guys here align well and are clipped in. And then it goes right in and down. At this point, you can grab this little guy and put the button back in. Normally it should just clip back in, but let's see what's going on. Oh yeah, it was a little bit out there. There we go. Make sure it works before you put it back on. So here it's as simple as just clip it in. Hope for the best that nothing breaks. And that's that for the initial steps. Now we're going to focus on the motherboard. So here's our Xbox motherboard. This, as I said earlier, is a 1.6. This revision is typically the most reliable, with one exception, these bad boys. But these ones are the Rubicon capacitors. They do not go bad. The Nichicon capacitors tend to blow up, and then that's bad news for your Xbox. Other than that, we have the updated clock capacitor here. This is why I would consider this to be more reliable boards to start with. These are not as likely to leak all over your board and wreck it for you, like on previous revisions. However, we will replace this one anyway because it has been 20 years and they are starting to go. Not common, I've only maybe seen 1 out of 10 go, but still, may as well do it. Also, since we started, we will finish the job here with the heat sinks. Now, taking these off, you gotta be just very careful with the clip here. A little screwdriver usually does the job. You can remove that. Now, many people will tell you, change the thermal paste. This is not thermal paste. This is a phase change material. You can see it's a square pad that's applied, and then it slowly melts with each heat cycle. And it creates a really good interface with both the CPU die and with the GPU IHS or integrated heatsink. But if you do want to do it, that's where it's a bit interesting to remove. Usually some people just try scrubbing it, and I've seen all sorts of marked up heat sinks as people did a horrible job at it. Best thing to use is Goo Gone, from my experience. There are some dedicated compounds for this kind of thing, but they don't do a better job in my opinion. Now some people will say, oh no, Goo Gone will destroy your electronics. Not really. It's completely fine. You just have to use it very sparingly. Put a little bit on a Q-tip and then go from there. And don't make a mess on your bench. So let's do that. We'll just grab a little bit of Goo Gone. Put it on the Q-tip, that's all you need. And then just gently, get some more light here. Just gently apply it to the die. You can put some more as well. Make sure there's a little layer, just like that. It's not gonna go and damage anything. So just leave it sitting there for a little while. Now for the heatsink itself, you can just go to town, just put a bunch and then just leave it on for a while. Then we have this one here. This one can be a bit more of a pain. Just press down and use our screwdriver to take this off. Now this one you do not ever want to pry on it. PCM, phase change material, is a adhesive when it's cold. It is a pretty decent adhesive, so you can absolutely damage your board. What you want is a heat gun. Just warm it up a little bit until it starts to move and then remove it. Another option that people do is they play a little bit of games on their computer, on their Xbox, and at that point this warms up, of course, transfers a bunch of heat into the heatsink, and you can remove it. Phase change material is called phase change material because it changes phases. When it's cold, it is solid. It is dried thermal paste. When it is warm, it changes. So it becomes soft and supple, as we'll demonstrate here in a sec. Now we'll just try it. See, now it's moving. There we go. So as you can see, when I warm this up, it's very soft. See, just wipes right off. Because it's a phase change material, this is not thermal paste. In any case, we'll be right back after we do a thorough cleanup on this little guy. 5 minutes later, we're making a little bit of progress. Now you will see, if you want to get all the melted PCM from the sides here, you can use a dull spudger, and I do mean a dull spudger. You don't want to damage anything. And then just carefully work your way around, and as you can see, the PCM that's already softened by the glue gun just falls right off. Pretty easy. Same here, just a little bit around the CPU. No problem whatsoever. Now if you want to see what's your progress, just grab a alcohol wipe, or you can use one of these with some alcohol and just gently clean off. See what's going on. You can see so much of that compound just comes right off. Yeah, it's a fairly easy material to work with if you know what you're doing. If you don't, then you'll be scrubbing and scratching your components for like half an hour with pretty subpar results. And anything that's left on there, it will prevent your thermal paste from having maximum effectiveness. Regardless, maximum effectiveness doesn't really matter that much for these consoles. They run pretty cool overall. And changing the PCM to a thermal paste will, you know, if it's a good thermal paste, it will net you, I don't know, a couple of degrees off. Nothing to write home about. As you can see, it's looking pretty spiffy already. Same here with the CPU. We just have to do a little bit more cleanup. But overall, we're doing pretty good. Maybe a little bit more glue gun on top of this Q-tip will do the job. As you can see, there's still more coming off. If you don't remove this fully, this will not be awfully effective. And I've seen a lot of people not being awfully effective when they do this. More coming off. Yeah, there's lots more where they came from. So we're just gonna soak it a little more with the Goo Gone. And come back in a minute. Alright, so after a few more minutes, we're pretty much done. As you can see, we're not really getting anything at this point. So the top of that surface is all cleaned. Same with the CPU. Not really getting anything anymore. So we're all good with those. So that is the result you want at the end of the process of removal. Now, for what thermal compound to use, MX4 is the answer for really most consoles. This thing is highly effective, lasts an extremely long time. They advertise 8 years or longer, so it does a pretty good job. Regarding how you apply it, well, there's the dot method in the middle, there's the X, there's a line, there's all sorts of methods. For a little CPU die, you really just want to do a dot. For this one, I like to do a little X in the middle. Really, anything works as long as there's enough compound. Nobody cares. This thing is non-conductive, so if it spills over a little bit, no big deal. But if you don't have enough, then you have a problem. So we will clean off the two other bits that we have here. So we're talking about the heat sinks, which have been soaking for a while. As you can see, the Goo Gone is starting to help, starting to come off a little bit. This one even more. This one usually is pretty easy. As you can see, it's already gone without any damage to the heatsink whatsoever. So don't just go scrubbing like crazy. Use some proper chemicals to remove it. This one's usually a little bit thicker, so sometimes you can just, just gently pry a little layer of it, or just let it soak a little longer. Over time, it will also come off, but it does take a little while. So I'll let it soak with a little bit more Goo Gone, and I will add some extra friction on there. But yeah, it will sometimes take a little while. You can see it's coming off. It just takes a little while. And once again, if you want to speed it up, a little spudger like this will often help you, but just don't scrape your heatsink. That's not good. Just be very gentle, and a dull spudger is usually best. Another method, if you grab your heat gun, you can do quite a bit with that as well. Alright, so let's heat this up a little. And that makes it even easier, more coming off. There we go. And the more it comes off, the easier it gets to remove the rest. Yeah, GPU is all gone. Yeah, the reason this bit around the CPU is a little bit more difficult is because it has just been sitting around the die. So this is the bit that kind of melts on the side a little. But it still comes off anyway. A little elbow grease will finalize this process. I'll clean it off with a little bit of alcohol. There we go. It's all gone. So that's the final result. We have a nice and clean heatsink. Now, since I have it off anyway, I will also clean it. There's still a very fine layer of dust left on there. So they'll get washed for a minute and we'll be right back. Before we go ahead and apply thermal paste, I took off the clock capacitor and put a new little guy in there. As you can see, completely fine. But again, it's not a bad idea to do it just in case. All it involves is just desoldering a couple of points here, putting some new solder, and you're all good to go. Now for the thermal paste, we have our heat sinks good to go. I'm at the end of the MX4 tube here, so it doesn't apply quite as accurately as it usually does, but pretty much. I'm gonna do a little X here. And that's plenty. And then here, I'm just gonna put a little blob and we're all set. So once we're done with that, make sure there's no dust on the back. So once we're done with that, we can just put that down. And same with this guy. Now, by the way, I do like to use a magic eraser just to resurface this very lightly before I put it back on. There we go. So, CPU, the clip goes this way. Just pop it on there on one side. There we go. And then once we press down, that will put the clamping pressure and we're all good. This one, there's really nothing to it. You just pop it on here, clip it down, and you're all set. And you will see that the MX4 is actually like a really sticky compound, so once it settles, that will not be moving anywhere. So it's pretty good for that as well. Before we start our final assembly, we need to tackle the DVD drive. That's a Philips VAD6035. The 6035 is usually very good news, but it's a very heavily used console. So I'm certainly hoping that is indeed the case. These are generally considered the most reliable DVD drives. Just gotta fish out the last screw from under the seal there. And let's see how bad this looks underneath. Maybe it's not too bad. Oh yeah, no, it's bad. Yeah, that is pretty bad. So we're just gonna go ahead and clean it. But first, I will show you how to eject this tray the easy way. As soon as you remove the top, just put a plastic spudger right here, and it's out. Now these ones don't tend to have the DVD drive belt problem, which happens a lot to the Samsung and Hitachi drives and less often to the Thomson drives on these. But it's still a little bit stretched and a little bit losing its shape. It's really not bad. I mean, I have a Samsung belt here. I took this off yesterday. You can see it looks like an egg after all this time. So yeah, this is why these get stuck. Philips, pretty good, even on a very used drive here. That looks pretty decent, but we will certainly have to clean this lens. We'll have to clean the spindle. We'll have to remove all this disgusting dust all over the place here. We'll have to apply some lubrication, and oh, that explains why there was something inside of our console rattling. Not really sure what it is. Oh, look at that. We have a present. It's a coin. Look at that. Yeah. Her Majesty the Queen. Alright, so we fished out our 1 cent coin, which we haven't had in a long time. This was made in 2001. And then was probably stuck inside this here DVD drive since the mid 2000s. So, collector value? Who knows? Alright, so we skipped the part where I blew a bunch of dust outside. Now it's a little bit cleaner, but still, long way to go. And I guess we'll have Her Majesty keep us company here in the meantime. So, we're gonna use our best friend, the cotton swab here. A little bit of alcohol should help, and the reason I'm using alcohol is because there's a lot of lubricant here. Philips does like to use generous lubrication, which then it does stick to it, and at some point it has to be just cleaned off and reapplied. I like to use some white lithium lubrication. White lithium grease. Some people apply it with our best buddy, the cotton swab, but honestly, a little paintbrush does a much better job. So yeah, we're just going to continue cleaning here. You want to make sure you get in here because there's a lot of crap that builds up in there. Not that it will stop the smooth operation of one of these Philips trays all the time, but just in case, you want to clean as much as you can. And not really full disassembly is not required. Just clean what you can, and that should do. Well, the show is mostly cleaned. Now it's time to focus on the lens. Make sure you use a fresh cotton swab. Alcohol works, screen cleaner works, whatever you'd like. And we're going to use a little alcohol to start with at least. And let's see if we can give this lens the best chance to actually read properly. I'm still not 100% confident given how disgustingly dirty this console was. Yeah, there's all sorts of crap stuck to the lens here. Just going to just gently clean around it. I mean, it does look a whole lot better than it was before. We'll use a little bit more. This time I'm using the screen/lens cleaner, so that shouldn't leave any residue whatsoever. Just finished cleaning, and you can see I'm using the dry side to just remove any streaks that might be left after. And that should do. Now, once you've done that, you can use this same swab to just clean some of the mess. So let's just move that, and yeah, there's like some hair here. Oh, terrific. At this point, we're back to alcohol because that works best for removing lubrication. Just remove what you can, because we will add more lubrication immediately after. Now there's a couple of rails down here. This rail really only needs lubrication on this side. This rail gets entirely, goes entirely through the laser, so that one probably should get a little bit of extra cleaning. To make sure that it's nice and happy. Yeah, and you can see it moves even without lubrication, but that will not be awfully quiet, and it will not be very happy with it. Just keep turning it until you're happy with the results. And I'd say at this point I'm happy. Now for the top part here, you can use the Q-tip, but I prefer microfiber. It tends to do a better job of really cleaning it and works a lot faster too. Just clean it with some alcohol and wipe it down, and away you go. There's one final thing left to do. You don't have to do it, but it is a nice thing in any case. And that is just to clean the little wheels where the belt goes. Just turn them and clean them. It's not a ton of dirt, but at this point you can grab your belt. Now for these little guys, it's best to use a belt like this, which you happen to have a pile of. Just put it on the big one first, just like so. And it's all good. Now, time for lubrication. Where do these drives like to be lubricated? So first, down here is where the tray goes. So make sure it's lubricated, especially around the guides. Nothing too much, just a little bit. And then we're going to put some here, some in here. Basically, if that's where they lube it from the factory, that's where you lube it. And with some other consoles, you don't lubricate at all. But these ones are designed to be lubricated, so go ahead and do that. Just a little bit on the tip of my brush, and we're gonna just pop that right in here. And in here as well. And that's it for the shell. Now, the worm gear here. Just make sure you get all sides, make it nice and even. And it'll be happy enough. Of course, don't forget the rails. This one, as I said, just needs a little bit on this side. The other one could use lubrication on all sides. That feels pretty smooth. And that should do for lubricating this bit. Next, we're gonna do the tray. Alright, so here's our tray. I already cleaned it off camera, so it's nice and clean. Now, where do we lubricate this stuff? Factory lubrication goes here. So basically at each rail and this little rail here, especially in the corner, Make sure it's nice and smooth. You can also lubricate the teeth if you feel like it. We'll do it just because. It's not really mandatory, but may as well. This is why I like to use a brush. It's just very easy to apply evenly on all the teeth. So we're getting a nice, consistent performance from the tray. There we go. So the tray is good to go. Back in the drive. Here's our drive. So how does it go back? First, put in the lower position, which is over here. And then just go ahead and pop it in. You can see it just goes right back. Now here, it will return to normal on its own, or you can just pop it right back to the end. Now, we just have to close it. Put our screws back in on top. The other models for Xbox use the screws at the bottom, but not this one. And we don't really want to put too much torque on there. I'm going to put my torque screwdriver at the minimum in the PH2 bit. And that's all it needs. There we go. So this completes the DVD drive. I'm gonna put it back in here. Just clips in, and we're ready for final assembly. Now, before we assemble everything, here's how you do final cleaning of the fan. Now, do not use alcohol on this. You just smudge it. Use something water-based like that screen cleaner I was using. Just a nice and thorough job. As you can see, it looks pretty good after that. Just to remove anything left over, so we're looking completely brand new. And this also works pretty fast. Now the reason I'm pretty fast is because I'm not using my finger, I'm using a Q-tip hidden inside here. And that's the trick. So, let's assemble. First, we have our motherboard. It's easiest to put it in first. You don't have to, but it's easier. So what you want to do is line up the Ethernet port. And there we go, pops right in. At this point, we can screw it in or just put a few more components first. So here's the fan. So start on this side, just pop it into this holder. Then gently pop it into the other holder. At this point, it needs to go right in here and press it down. And if you're lucky, it will not break those clips at the bottom. It happens, especially on the black consoles. Crystal, not as much. All right, so we're good there. Then we have our power supply. Handle with care. There's a reason there's all these warnings here, but this one is fully discharged, so really no biggie. So we're going to pop that in. There's a couple of screw holes. There we go. We are right where we need to be. At this point, I'm gonna just put every screw back in. So here, I prefer to go low torque or no torque. Probably best to do it by hand, but it's always possible that it strips a hole. Don't worry about it too much. There's another 10 of them, or for this board revision, another 9 of them. There you go. Low torque is the way to go. So it's actually been a couple of hours since I started the final assembly, and as every professional video has to, I ran out of battery on my phone, so now we can resume. So back to screwing down the motherboard. So good. Yeah, that screw's going down. Okay, so I think we got them all, and now we got the ports. All right, so now to screw down the power supply, we got 2 screws. 1, 2. This was always a little bit of a pain. Oh, might make it. There we go. Okay, at this point, we can plug all of these cables into the motherboard. There's 1, 2. 3, and the main power supply connector right there. On the other side, I want to get the DVD drive connectors. There's 1, and there is the IDE cable. So here's the actual drive. Just be very careful with that, so don't bend any pins. And just gotta position the drive into place, and we're all good. Next up, we have the hard drive. So the hard drive has a few screws that have to get in there. These are the only screws that are actually not they're not T10 or T20 on the Xbox. Those are T15. You could probably get away with T10, but I'd rather not, so we're gonna just use the T15. Got that on a different screwdriver here. And make sure those have a little bit of torque on them. You'll see they even use some thread locker on them, because I've occasionally seen them fall into a console, and since the hard drive is above the power supply, they can cause a nice little short. Alright, now time to pop the hard drive in. First, we want to get this cable straight through here and pull it through. There we go. Pop that right in and plug it in. Then we have the IDE cable. To make sure you're looking at that when you're doing it. So it's a little hard to do on camera, but basically make sure it is firmly in there. You don't want to have any hard drive errors when you do this. And finally, we got 3 more screws. Let's see if we can pop them in there without any falling down and making us disassemble the whole thing again. There's 1. Okay, we can show you that. There's 2. And 3. We have done well. Alright, so that is the main assembly. At this point it's good to test the unit, and then we'll put the top on. Now we have the unit all plugged in, so ideally we want it to start up. Let's see what happens. Okay, we got power, and we have video. And the drive ejects beautifully. Now let's see if it reads the disk. that, we want to have a controller plugged in so we can get past the adjust time message and we're all good. Alright, crossing fingers that it reads. These are good sounds of a fully working Xbox. Alright, now that we know this thing works, let's put the top back on. I will not do too much with this top shell. I'll let it loose for, stay loose for now, in case I have to clean any more. I'll pop that in, and there we go. It's all nice and clean. Now at this point, we want to do a little polish on top, especially the Xbox logo tends to get a little hazy, a little scratched up, and the crystal finish here can also get a little bit off. So for that, we are going to use this trusty Ryobi polisher. And I really like to use this Novus fine scratch remover. It tends to do a very good job. Just shake the bottle and apply a little bit. Then we want to just smudge it a little bit so it doesn't spray all over the place. Once we do the final polish, and let's go. That should do the job. Just gotta wipe off any excess compound. We should be all set. Apply a little bit of whoosh just to make sure I don't have any other compound left, as they can get ugly. And here we go. Nice and shiny. We like shiny over here. So there you go. That's the restoration of this now crystal Xbox, looking a whole lot better, and hopefully it will find a new home soon.